I am not a person. I am the black water of Catalina, night, salt, and memory. I brushed the hem of a dark coat and heard the star-pin scratch of meteors sliding across the ocean like an ellipsis no one dared to finish. I heard the clink of a mast fitting, the small bump of a tender drifting, a man's mutter torn in two by the wind. Her name is Natalie. Hollywood put neon in her eyes, and I put a cold line on her throat. By the time the city woke, I was still holding my secret, and they gave it a polite name, an accident. But secrets have a habit of returning whenever the tide wind turns. We start with a night, one boat, 4 people, and a question that refuses to sink. Hollywood loves stories with endings. It likes to drop the curtain with a flare of letters, with a lipstick print drying on the lip of a martini glass. But some stories do not comply. They wait by the edge of the water, with a wet coat and a tender missing somewhere in the fog. Off Catalina Island, a yacht hangs on her hook. A film star is aboard, her name bright as a marquee, Natalie Wood. With her, a celebrated husband, Robert. A fellow actor, Christopher, and a captain who heard more than he wanted to say aloud. They came to rest. They came to forget. But the sea does not forget. Wang. You're listening to Veil Files Hosa Chuadong, where the white space between 2 words also speaks. This episode, Bess, we enter Natalie Wood, Hollywood's drowning mystery. Before we dive, take a long breath. Black water is never as frightening as the things we think we know. I won't tell this like a neat case file. Night and sea hate straight lines, so we begin with a common tale. A girl becomes a star too early, grows up beneath the click of shutters, learns to smile before she learns to brace against the wind. Some say she feared deep water. Some say whenever she looked at the sea, a small voice rose in her, don't. But a life collects dockside photo shoots, shots staged at the lip of the tide, and parties that end with someone looking over the rail and seeing nothing at all. If memory is a mirror, this one is cracked. Into each crack, someone pushes their own version of the night. Say their names. Natalie. Robert. Ciphers. The captain. The fog came slow. The liquor quick. There was talk, there was laughter, then an argument cut in half by the wind. A tender was tied at the stern, a line, a knot that smelled of salt. Someone later said they heard a cry from the water. Someone else heard only weather. And the black water, it heard a single truth. The human body does not make movie sounds when it falls. Where is she? That question is always asked 1 beat later than it should be. You want a timeline? All right, but don't expect a ruler. Before midnight, glasses, voices bigger than necessary, feelings unmoored. After midnight, an absence on deck, a coat not where it was. The tender, perhaps still tied, perhaps already adrift. Someone searches. Someone calls. Then, everything resolves to one point. A late alarm. Point 6, cold water. And a body soft as a bulb just gone dark. When people say too late, that's when they begin fitting the night's broken pieces together. Stories don't match. That's why they look honest. One voice, I heard a call for help from the water. Another, the wind was up, the swell was mean, I'm not sure. One remembers a bottle breaking on deck. Another remembers a thin apology the night before. Witnesses won't hold still. Fear, loyalty, and the unconscious theater of protecting one's own role pull each sentence to a different shore. When no one wants to be the villain in their own story, the truth must swim by itself. On deck, a coat. At the stern, a line. In the cove, the missing tender found somewhere else. And the water, it keeps bruises that can't speak human. You might ask, why step out on a windy night? Cold, dark, black water, was it a sound? The tender's line rubbing? A wish to be away? But exhibits don't answer why. They only say, was, and here. We trust exhibits like we trust a compass. Even a compass drifts when you set it beside a heart that's buzzing. A squeal of rope, a squeal of rope, a tender slipping, a missed footing. Another stages a quarrel, a flash of anger, a dark decision. A third is suspicion itself. If she feared the water, why step out alone? Years later, old questions return, wearing new coats, knocking with patient fingers at an archive labeled closed. The truth may be single, 6, but the roads to it are as many as the lines in your palm. Lay the placards down, movie star, wife, colleague. Between those three shadows, Natalie walks a thin plank stretched between two worlds, light and black water. On screen, she outran fate. Off screen, fate needs no director. I think of her hands, hands trained to wave at lenses. Hands that finally had to wave in the night water. Did anyone see? Perhaps the tragedy isn't drowning, but drowning among people who say, I knew her. Look at the stage for this night. Fog, liquor, an argument, water, coat, tender, anchor, and a city waking early to bad news. Each detail is a chessman. Nudge one, and the board tells a different story. Ask about motive, and the black water asks back, are you sure you understand another heart at minute 3 of its anger? The sea isn't a stage, and yet that night, it performed something no one could look away from. Years pass. Someone returns to the drawer with the done label. They open it, and there's the smell of old paper, the ghost of salt that should have blown away. Old questions become new because we dare to reread. Facts don't change by themselves. It's the angle of the light and how far the shadow reaches. Do you believe in memory's magic? Not ours, the night's. The island is a limestone theater, the cove an acoustic pocket, and the wind a fussy sound engineer. Imagine this. Voices on deck can file down to a scratch when the wind flips. A plea for help can fork. In one ear, it's a word. In another, it's silence. Geography teaches humility. What you hear may be the shape of your own fear. On a map, night is a dark patch. At sea, point 4, night is depth itself. Now we rebuild that night like a multi-track session. Track 1, bar, clinks, laughs, the instant when merriment turns color. Deck, wind, swell, a single line rubbing the quarter. Track 3, cabin, silence stretched tight as a string before it snaps. Track 4, water, breath without warmth, the hush of wet fabric. Push one fader up, and the rest fall back. That's how testimony is born. The truth isn't loud. It just stands in the right place and waits for someone to lower the background music. Why would someone who feared the water step into a windy night? Why wasn't the tender where it should be? Point 8. Why, if there was a call, didn't it pull anyone out onto the deck? Why do we return to these same questions, knowing the black water has blurred the sharp edge of any answer? Maybe because we cannot bear an ending without a culprit, even when the culprit is the night. If I must name it, I'll call it the fall of certainty. Love and fame share a taste. They both want all of you. On a boat, among egos polished to a mirror shine, one sentence can be a burr. I take no side, the sea has none. But I know this, jealousy weighs, so does hurt, so does an unfinished line. And black water is very good at weighing. Some nights, the height 6, everyone believes they are right. Come morning, only the sea hasn't changed its mind. Do you hear that? It's the silence kept for a woman who made millions believe in the spell of images. Let it speak for all the apologies no one could form. We'll go on, because the story needs an exit. A file can close, a story, especially one written in water, won't lie still. People cut films, write books, debate on tables lit brighter than real eyes. Each version is a tender. Some are lashed fast, some drift and wash up in another cove, later, wetter. Perhaps we don't need another tender. We need to stand and watch the surface until it calms by itself. Just one breath later, we leave the laughter of the harbor bar for the wind slicing the deck, where every joke is quietly unhooked. When a name is called the third time, the night changes color. From here on, we follow the watermark. Each testimony points an arrow. When they disagree, we return to what stands still, the exhibits. Lower the music and listen for a heartbeat, not ours. Pause at point 4, the nights. Carry this question as we cross over. If the night could talk, what would it say? Good. Now, the last part. There is always a room left after a night ends. Not empty, just paused. A glass with a ring of light on the table. A coat draped, not folded. A chair turned 5 degrees from straight. Rooms keep angles the way water keeps sound. If you stand still, you can hear where the voice was brighter and where it dimmed. Some say she smiled earlier that evening. Some remember the smile as brave. Some remember it as work. Between a brave smile and a working smile is a line thinner than a mooring string. The coat. I am made to keep heat. Tonight I kept a shape for a while, then couldn't. The rope? I know only tension and slack. Men ask me why, but I can give them only how. The tender. I am the small decision you postpone until morning. The glass. My chip is a memory that refuses to round off. The ring of shore lights. I blinked like distant counsel. Not close, not far, not enough. When objects speak, they do not accuse. They inventory. From the cove to the bluff, people hear what wind allows. One remembers words. Another remembers only a shape of sound, like a hand through frosted glass. Later, memory drafts subtitles. It writes text where there were only vowels. A night at sea is a bad courtroom for hearing. We like to believe memory is a vault. It is more like an editor with coffee, ambitious, impatient, changing the order to make sense. It cuts the laugh that came before the silence. It trims the apology, 6:6. It exports a file named Truth v5. And yet, even the best edit can't change the frame where someone isn't there. Keep that frame in your palm, we'll need it. Night water takes temperature, like a thief takes rings, swiftly, without ceremony. Breath quickens, thinking loops, muscles bargain for warmth that isn't coming. This is not melodrama, it is a simple arithmetic. Heat lost, strength spent. If anyone was out there long enough to call, their voice would set on the water like a small coin and sink. Not all silences are chosen. Let's sketch what we can stage without stating what we cannot prove. Deck. Rails waist high, light cones soft. Stern, a line to the tender, not simple but wet. Cabin. Talk low, then higher, then none. Lulu. Water. Cold, steady, indifferent. From this map, pause at point 4, draw only arrows, no verdicts. 1. Arrows remind us of direction, not destination. Dear morning, you will read headlines. You will sort them as we all do, by the speed with which they let you move on. Please, slow down. There is a person inside this story. There are rooms that will not be touched for a while. There is a cup that no one wants to wash yet. Signed, The Night. Some mail is addressed to time, not to people. Cut A. Exhibit first. Open on the coat, the rope, the tender. Build outward to the humans. Cut B. Hearts first. Open on hands and eyes in the bar light. Build inward to the deck. Cut C. Water first. Let the sea narrate. Then allow the people to interrupt. Each cut is true to itself. None is the truth alone. Choose a cut, the others will haunt its edges. Mornings after are made of gentle paperwork and rough kindness. Someone brings a blanket too late, but brings it anyway. Someone writes down a name, carefully, as if names could bruise. And the city, with its routines and coffees and commute radios, receives a proper noun and turns quiet for a beat. Headlines are loud, grief isn't. What we know, narration safe, there was a boat, a night, 4 people, and water that does not forgive. Objects were later found in places that required explanation. Accounts differ in tone, detail, and timing. What we don't know, and should not pretend to. The intention behind any step taken into that wind. The precise words said in the cabin or on deck. The exact path of sound across water that night. What we could test, story-safe experiments. Sound drift. Record calls at varying distances and wind angles. Compare what an ear might report. Tenderline noise. Recreate rope-on-stern sounds to gauge how easily they mimic a knock that lures someone out. Visibility bias, light cones on deck versus eyes adapted to bar light, measure how long it takes to scan a stern and notice absence. Testing cannot heal a night, but it can shave the edges of our guesses. Fame is a warehouse of echoes. A voice enters, changes shape, returns as a chorus. The person inside that warehouse, their errands, their weather, their very normal day, gets misfiled under myth. Tonight's story asks for a small correction. Woman first, myth later, if at all. Say her name softly, the way you would in a room, not on a billboard. Imagine a door opening again. I'm back. The air was colder than I thought. What would we do with all the drafts we wrote overnight? We would set them down and ask about coffee, and call a car, and be grateful for something as plain as socks. Hold that imagined morning as a way to measure the size of the loss. Counterfactuals are tenderness in disguise. Every vessel has a keeper of small correctives, someone who tightens what loosens, who sees the sky turning before others do. Even they, on some nights, cannot thread all the needles at once. Let this be a note of grace for anyone who later says, "I should have." Knights collect regrets, as peers collect barnacles. I am the sea. I have no intentions, I have habits. I keep, I carry, I return things when I am finished with them, never as they were. People ask me for truth. I give them the edge where truth might be seen on a clear day. This night, like all nights, was full of choices I did not make. We can end here, or if you need a final page, turn once more. I am still the black water of Catalina. I do not know sorrow. I know how to keep. I keep laughter already gone, arguments torn by wind, and the last warmth of a woman when the night touched her throat. The city still lights her name. Each time the letters flare, the sea hears someone calling. Perhaps, somewhere between the waves. 6. What happened is still happening, to remind us that endings don't always know the way home. And if you ask what I would say to that night, I'd say, be gentle. Some people are born to pass through light, not to vanish beneath it. You've been listening to Natalie Wood, Hollywood's Drowning Mystery, part of Veil Files, Hosa Chuadong. If this story touched you, leave us a small sign, subscribe, like lighting another lamp on the shore. I'm your narrator. See you in the next case, where another mystery is still breathing under the mist.